Is this thing on? I don't think this thing is glitchy. So we're recording to my Trello. Get my notes so we can get this going. Where is my notes? Welcome back to my channel, Dina J from Around the Way. So if you've been following the series, we've been talking about my court case, and where we left off in the last video was essentially all of the stuff regarding the domestic violence was brought to the judge. The drug and alcohol abuse and all of that was brought to the judge. The judge made some decisions on the parenting time. And then we left off with my ex's drug and alcohol test coming back positive, which definitely redirected some of the things that needed to happen as a next step basis. So we're gonna go right on into the next thing that we are entering with regard to my court case. And it's funny when I'm going through this, because I'm going through step by step of everything I went through, and my God, it was such a long process. So bear with me, because I have to use my notes in order to make sure that I am keeping track, and I also don't want to be super long-winded, and I don't want to be like, I think this is what happened, so bear with me. So we left off with the drug test, and of course that was necessary for him to course correct. So another drug test was administered for my ex to take, and that was going to be at a randomized time within 60 days. So the judge ordered that he had to take another drug test and also still restricted the parenting time. So at that point, we were still only at Tuesdays that he had with our son, and I had my son the rest of the time. And your girl was tired. Like my mom and some other people step in to help me out while I worked and all the things, right? So boom. But one thing I wanted to point out is that, can y'all believe that his attorney had requested to the judge that I also take a second drug and alcohol test? The ridiculousness. Why? For what? The reasoning is just because he wanted to irritate me, I guess. But the judge was like, her drug and alcohol test, first of all, she's not the one with any allegations against her. She's not the reason why we're here as it relates to what was brought forward to the court or to any parent regarding domestic violence. But her stuff didn't come back positive. So why would she be taking another test? So the judge threw that request out, which was ridiculous. And the opposing side, i.e. his attorney, also requested that I too pay for the second drug test, to which the judge was like, no. Why didn't your client not take any drugs or alcohol or drink any alcohol, right? Why did he not do that in lieu of you trying to put the cost on the mother who actually had negative results? That doesn't make any sense. So whatever, that was also thrown out, which was utterly ridiculous, but it just speaks to the shenanigans. So moving right along, the opposing party also tried to just skate over the overlying issues that still were present and we had not addressed, which was the domestic violence and everything that the paramour brought forward. So he tried to skirt that over and say, oh, well, that's not important, but this is where we're going. And they tried to just move forward with the 50-50 requests for parenting. And the judge was like, oh, we have to really address certain things here. First of all, the parents need to come to some level of agreement with the allocation judgment. There's so much in the middle, right? So while they're trying to push the needle and move it along, nothing else is at play here. The judge was like, no, we still have other matters that are still open. And then we touch on the GAL's recommendations, which is the overarching thing of this specific status in court. And this is where my pistivity, is that a word? But anyway, this is where I got pissed off to the 10th power. Angry, aggy, irritated, all the things. Because during the status, this is the first time that he just really like, what the hell? He mentioned, he spoke to the paramour, and of course, she was to be interviewed by him, but what he expressed during this status is that she recanted her story, which we already knew, right? So she recanted everything and she said that, oh, he's a good father. And I said all these things about what he did to me out of anger. And it was just like, what? You have injuries, but whatever. So like I mentioned in the last video, I know what I endured. I know what I experienced. And I know that what she said, deep down, I feel like it was true. But we have to say allegedly because she never decided to move forward and decided to recant her story. So based on that alone, the GAL decided that there weren't really any problems. There's no concern here. Do need to address the drug and alcohol test being positive and the underlying issues between the parents that we need to work out. But his recommendation was, well, I don't necessarily see a reason to remove the child or request for any of these things that he has to do in order to have time again with his child. So essentially, it's just take the drug test, hopefully it comes back negative, and then we can establish parenting time. And I'm just like, what? That's it? No. Like, are you kidding me? It was comical to me that was his recommendation, because I'm just like, so what about the pictures? What about the text messages? And so he acknowledged that there were concerns about the behaviors and things like that. But he looked at the abuse and everything that was shared as matters amongst the adults. It wasn't concerning to him as it relates to my son's well-being. And while I can understand the sentiment behind that, my thing, as I always say, is the exposure, right? And that's the problem that I have with like the justice system or family system, family court, because they truly view it as, so nothing is being done to harm the child, so we're not really concerned about that. So the parents can drink and drunk and or drug and drink and do all these things around the child, and as long as the child is not being harmed, it is what it is. Like, to me, that is so strange, how there can be abuse and all these things happening around the child, and there's no concern if the child is not being harmed. That to me is strange. I was super disappointed about that because it gave me a reality check on how family court works and how to tailor my expectations. I don't know about many people, but for me, entering into family court, I expect there to be fair and just, and for things to make sense in an obvious way, especially when all of these type of allegations and abuse and things are popping up as a means of why we're in this court case to begin with. So it really disheartened me as it relates to my expectations of the process, because I'm like, dang, so people can do anything and say anything and lie and there's no consequence? None whatsoever. There's no consequence. They could just go around and recant stories and whatever with relation to the care of a child and what is being shared with the other parent, and that's okay. Super discouraging to me. And I really didn't appreciate that. But I also had to get really realistic about what is in front of me and how this is going. So at that point, from January to pretty much February, we were just focusing on the allocation judgment and trying to get somewhere with that. And what an allocation judgment is essentially an agreement between the parents of all of the things that they need to agree to, right? So it outlines everything that is going to happen with this child and how the parents work with one another to co-parent and make sure that the child's best interest is always at play as they co-parent. So, for example, some of the things that were in my allocation judgment that we focused on was which parent gets the primary residence, who says the school district is mine, the address is mine, I'm the primary residential parent, right? So that's laid out. It details what the schedules are, right? So you want to look at the holidays, you want to look at spring break, summer break, You also want to look at who's going to spend time on what birthday. If even and odd years are coming into play with how you vacation during the summer, or who gets Christmas one year, who gets New Year's the next. So all of those things come into a part of the allocation judgment. You also talk about medical, like do you make medical decisions? If the child needs therapy, how is that pursued? All of those things are a part of the allocation judgment, and more and more. Like, that was going to be a process. So the judge was like, okay, you all have to take that offline and start drafting a document. Start from where you started initially, what was already, going on. And like I said, it was like bare bones minimum. We emailed each other the schedule, but we were kind of going through the motions in real time. As the holidays popped up, we would split the days or whatever. And before things got super contentious, we were able to pretty much negotiate things as co-parents before this whole situation blew up with the domestic violence stuff. So my attorney and I decided to start from that point of what we already had established and then started to build upon that. And of course, my attorney has experience with this, so she had a lot of examples and a lot of drafts, and we had to talk through the ideal situation of what co-parenting looked like for me, and then find the balance in between what is fair and what is agreeable in some cases, and then what we would have to be prepared to potentially fight for or request in court. So that's where we kind of left things off with regards to the allocation judgment. We took that offline, I guess you can say, and then you're working through that as a document. So I think I will do a separate video of everything that my allocation judgment spells out, because I don't think a lot of people think about every single thing that you should consider when it comes to creating a parenting plan with your co-parent. Like, there were things that my attorney mentioned, and I was just like, people fight over that? And she was just like, yeah. When you're in these type of situations that are highly contentious, it gets even worse. So I will definitely do a separate video of the things that you need to consider for an allocation judgment to read well, make sense, go smoothly, and what not to leave out, so that you don't have to come back to court or fight for whatever, and it's spelled out very explicitly in your allocation judgment. I'll do a video on that. So because the other party was doing nothing to move the needle, when I say we still didn't get a response from any of the motions, we still hadn't gotten the financial affidavit. Literally nothing was provided to us. So because of that, we drafted a proposal and just for the allocation judgment and provided it to them. We entered into court. And like I said, anything that you are trying to settle or the communication has to always go through the court so that everyone's aware of what's going on. So for instance, let's say that my attorney decided that she was going to draft something on my behalf and try to meet in the middle without the judge intervening and without us having another hearing. That attempt or letter or communication also needs to be shared with the court. Like, a document is drafted, we say, hey, we provided this, and it's just more so for tracking, just to make sure that every piece of information that is going on between both parties that are pertinent to the case are known by the court as well. So you always have to be mindful of that while you're going through this, right? So we drafted a proposed AJ, which is the allocation judgment, and we provided it to the opposing party, and then we also provided it to the court. Boom. Then we had to file a motion for default because, as I mentioned just a moment ago, the other side did not submit anything. They didn't provide anything. They hadn't responded to anything. So we, meaning me and my attorney and I, we were doing all the work, and that's fine. We were kind of moving things along, but they have to respond at some point, like have to acknowledge what's in front of us versus just coming up to these statuses and these hearings and then trying to just fight for whatever during those moments. It's like, no. You literally have not responded to anything. You literally haven't given us anything to work with. So, hello. So we filed a motion for default. We filed this because of the time that from the time that we entered the case up until that moment, nothing had been received. As I mentioned, the opposing side gave us nothing, no financial affidavit, no response, nothing was provided yet. So we were like, enough is enough. Like, so that happened. Then we had a hearing in March of 2023 to address the motion for default. And this is the sucky thing about the court system in general. Like, much time goes by because of how slow the process is. The process is extremely slow and just painful because it's like, oh, you filed something, then it has to be entered to the court, then it has to be presented in front of the judge, then this other issue or whatever. And it's just like, ugh. If the judge isn't privy of the information or whatever was filed, then you might get a continuance, and it's just annoying. So we filed a motion for the default and then had a hearing or a status schedule for that. And at that point, it had been, let me see, September, October, November, December, January, February. So it had been 5 months going into 6 months of us being in this case, us not receiving anything, and my mind started to wonder, like, what if this takes another 6 months? So I started to explore with my attorney what it would look like if we requested for a petition of fees, because I was just starting to get nervous that he would be trying to wipe me out financially, and I wholeheartedly think that that was what he was trying to do, as I said previously in one of the other videos. And I'm like, oh, I can't let this man like wipe me out financially through this. And it eventually happened, but not to the extent where it could have, right? Because I decided to submit a petition for fees. Because I said to myself, they're stalling. They haven't submitted anything. This is just going on. And if this is purposeful, I want to put it in, I want to track it, and I want to put it in writing that I'm requesting to be alleviated of some of my attorney's fees because y'all are playing games over there. So we went with that. The timestamp of what I was requested started from that point on, right? That was good that I got some counsel on that, because my God, if I wouldn't have done that, I would have been way more in the hole than I was already, and ended up being at the end of all of it. And I will share in a later video how that shaked out during the process. So we started to draft the petition of fees, and then we ran into a big issue. Our judge was changed mid-case. For whatever reason, there were some administrative changes that were happening with the court. So the judge that was presiding over my case went to another division in the court system, and then we got a completely new judge. And that, I don't know. I can't say whether it worked well or not. I can't say that the other judge was better or worse. I think that the other judge, for me, was very proactive in making sure he understood where everything was and hearing out the concerns from all ends. This judge did not have family court experience prior to her proceeding and to this family court. And while she had great experience, I did some research on her, and I'm just like, she has not been doing this work. Like, she did work for like corporations and companies and businesses and small businesses, but there was nothing that was family court related at all in her experience, which made me very nervous. So at any rate, I was what it was, and she ended up being our judge. And I looked at her coming in mid-case for us as a setback, because now she needed to be briefed on everything that happened. So she didn't get the advantage of having all of the information in real time and how things were going. The other disadvantage that I saw, that it interfered with the momentum of the case, right? Because obviously now she needs to be briefed, and she's not even like privy to any of the interactions between us, right? From opposing counsel to ex-wife and what that is. That is also a major problem, because I think you have to assess personalities and you have to look out for how people are moving. And now that we were in this position with this new judge, she has no inkling of this, right? So she's like getting to know us. You don't get the personality, you don't get to see how people are moving, and then you also don't get to see the shenanigans. So up until that point, the other judge was very aware and was able to see like some of the nonsense that was going on. And then with her, everything is brand new. So they get to, button themselves up when we know they're full of crap, right? So that was the other piece that irritated me about getting a new judge. And then now we also had to get acquainted with her style. All judges are different. Yes, they're supposed to be unbiased and fair, but every judge has their personality. They react to certain things differently. So now we had to understand what that looked like. And my attorney didn't necessarily have any experience with her because she was not a family law judge. So nobody knew much about how she ruled or what her take was on anything regarding like family law. And it's really strange. Like all of us were kind of like getting to know this process with this new judge, and it was just so annoying. I can't say, looking back, I can't say she was good or bad. I think, she had certain things that definitely worked in my favor, in how she approached some of the rulings. And then some of the things I'm just like, are you paying attention? But it was mid-March of 2023 where we ended up getting in front of the judge, and she was briefed on every single thing that happened and where things stood. She also heard from both sides, mostly from the attorneys. There were not very many instances to that point where we would interject, or my ex-husband would interject a lot. Anytime there was something that needed to be clarified or something that was misspoken, or my attorney forgot something, I would raise my hand, and all of this was virtual at that time. I would definitely chime in, and with all due respect, no, not to interrupt, but we need to clarify this. And I recommend that you do that when, things need to be cleared up, because you just don't want anything to be misunderstood, and you want everything to be crystal clear as to whatever the topic of discussion is, right? So I definitely did that for myself and spoke up when needed. The GAL was late to that status, and this is a thing about the GAL, continued to suck throughout the whole process. She ended up ruling that the opposing parties needed to acknowledge the petition. My ex-husband's second drug test came back at that point, and it was negative, so he decided to be smart this time around. And I don't know that I mentioned it, but he was ruled to take a randomized drug test within 60 days from the January hearing. So within 60 days of the January status hearing, whatever, until the March status, there was a drug test that he took in between that timing, and then it came back negative, thankfully for him. So that was that point. The judge did continue to rule that he got the Tuesdays, and then we started to explore talking about additional parenting time, which at that point had not gotten any further with easing into a parenting schedule that was a little bit more than what the previous judge was comfortable providing. So at that point, we were still at the Tuesdays. So boom, that happened. And then she also recommended that we try to work things out within mediation, and through the mediation and work out the parenting, and try not to, come back to court too much, right? Which we had to then schedule another status to see where things were and how far we had gotten. So I'll stop there, because the next round of things that ended up happening were just utter chaos after that, because we needed to prepare for a trial. we were not able to get anywhere with mediation, and I'll share the attempts of what that looked like in the next video. But then we also had to get ready for the testimonial trial regarding the domestic violence abuse, because I would not let that go. I had a burning desire to make sure that that got addressed, and however that would shake out, just wanted it to be addressed, and I was not letting the domestic violence piece go. So we had to subpoena the paramour, and then we had to gather the evidence, and then we had to get ready for the deposition, and then we had to submit my petition for fees, and then also try to mediate in between all of that. So we will cover all of this in the next video, and then the GAL messed up even more, okay, as we started to prepare for trial in so many different ways. So yeah, let me cut it there, and then we will meet each other in the next video. All right, y'all, we have wrapped up another part to the series. Thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for watching my video. If my content resonates, or my videos resonates, or the topic resonates with you, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Once we exit out of this series, we'll start talking about other things, but I definitely want to close this out, you know, while we are in topic. So thank you so much for joining me on the journey. Please subscribe to my channel, and thank you all. All right, nos vemos la próxima vez, ¿ok? Ok, bueno pues. Dina J from Around the Way is going to offer a variety of different topics regarding womanhood, family, beauty, todas las cosas que quieres saber de mí. Okay, come on hair, come on shine. It's looking good. I just did my hair today and it looks so damn good. Like that, healthy. All right, random moments. Okay, I get it. All right, bye. Bye.